In this video, I'm going to answer some of my favorite first-time homebuyer questions, and definitely questions that I think every first-time homebuyer needs to know. We're going to get right into it. I'm Shahida Hill, getting you over the hill to home ownership and helping you confidently buy your first home. Question number one. Can you add someone to your deed without them being on the mortgage? And in most states, this answer is yes. This often happens when you have one spouse that is going ahead and getting the mortgage completely in their name and they're not using their other spouse on the loan, but you can definitely add them to the deed, usually right after closing or right during closing. So you need to ask your closing attorney or your title company if you can add your spouse to the deed. And most people, that gives them ownership of the house. They're not on the mortgage, so just be mindful of that. When you give someone ownership of your property, then they get some say in what happens with that property. So being on the deed gives them ownership, but they have none of the responsibility of the mortgage. So be very mindful of that. If I'm married, I want to be on the deed, definitely, even if I'm not on the mortgage. Number two. Can you buy a house in any state? The answer to this is yes. Definitely you can buy a house in any state, but you may lose the advantage of owner occupancy. So owner occupancy means that you're going to be living in the house that you are buying. So if you are just going to be buying a house, most lenders consider that an investment property. If you're going to buy a house, but you're not going to live in it. So they feel that that's a higher risk. Okay, you're more of a higher risk borrower because you have to live somewhere. So you're going to pay your rent or your mortgage in the place that you are living before you pay your rent or your mortgage in the place that you are not living. So you're more of a higher risk to default on your mortgage. So they give the benefit, lower interest rates, lower down payments to people that are going to be owner occupants versus people that are going to buy and not live in that house. Now, how do they know you're going to live in that house? Typically just by your employment. If you work in the area, you work in that state, then they're assuming that you will be living in that house. So you have to be able to prove that you're going to get or have employment in that house by the time you close on that house. So a lot of you that are moving out of state, moving to another area, you're going to have to make sure that you can prove, a job offer or something like that you're going to be living in that state if you want to take advantage of lower interest rates and lower down payments, because it's going to be, a lot more for you to buy it as an investment property or as a second property. Number three, can you buy a house right out of college? The answer to this is yes as well. One of the benefits of buying a house right out of college is that you don't have to wait the 2 years typically required, like 2 years of work history that most lenders want you to have before you buy your first home. So if you are going to have a job, you do have to have a job. If you're going to have a job right out of college, then you can, get a house or qualify for a house without 2 years of work history. As long as you have income, you have that job, you'll be able to typically, credit and all of that stuff matters as well, but typically you'll be able to buy a house right out of college. Number four, how do you know if you're getting a good interest rate? There are two things I'm going to give you for this one. Number one is I love this website. This website is something that the Consumer Finance Commission, they come out with, and they're using real data to tell you what people are getting in your state by interest rate. So in your state by interest rate, you can look at this website and they'll tell you the average that people are getting in your area. And then also, of course, if you watch this channel for a while, you need to get 3 quotes. You're not just going to go with one lender. You're going to get 3 quotes and see what rates they're all quoting you. So you make sure you're getting the best rate that way as well. Number 5, how much money do I have to have in the bank to get a pre-approval? I love this question because you don't have to have any money in the bank to get a pre-approval. I'm not saying you don't have to have any money in the bank to close, but to get a pre-approval is just saying, hey, you'll be able to afford, or you'll be able to borrow this amount to buy a house. And I like for first-time home buyers to know this as early as possible. So even if you don't have a lot of money saved or any money saved, you can get a pre-approval. If you have a good credit score, if you have, employment, if you have that, typically you can go ahead and get pre-approved so you know exactly where you stand. And I like for first-time home buyers to get this as early as possible. So don't worry about how much money you have to have in the bank to get a pre-approval. Now, to close, you will have to have your down payment, you will have to have your closing costs, but you'll be able to figure out what that is either ahead of time or after the fact, because you don't have to pay anything for a pre-approval. So I like that knowledge for people to know, as they're planning where they stand. All right, we're halfway through our list. So number 6, what is considered a first-time home buyer? And a lot of people need to know this if they're planning on using a first-time home buyer program. And it really depends on the program, but for the most part, they consider a first-time home buyer somebody that has not owned a home in the last 3 years. So it's not that you've never owned a home, but you cannot have owned a home in a lot of cases in the last 3 years. But if you haven't owned one in the last 3 years, they will, in most cases, consider you a first-time home buyer. And then some, programs, they only require that you don't currently own a home. So you really want to make sure that you understand what they consider a first-time home buyer. Number 7, can I use multiple down payment assistance or grant programs at once? And this really depends on the programs. I've seen some state programs where you can, stack them with a city program, but you have to ask the administrator of that program, are there any other, assistance or grants that I can use with your program? Because they will know things that people have used in the past and been successful in using. But for the most part, some of our larger programs like Bank of America and trying to put NACA with, that program, a lot of those things don't go together. But if you just ask the program administrator, can you use another grant program, another down payment assistance program with their program? They typically have that answer for you. Number 8, am I too old to buy a house? There's no age requirement other than being 18, because that's when you can enter into a contract. But after 18, there's no age limit to buy a house. You can buy a house at any age. They can't discriminate against you because of your age as well. So if you're 90 and you can afford it, you have the credit and you want to buy a house, you could. But I would say you want to make sure when you're buying in retirement, because you're probably not going to work in those later years of your life, that you're going to be able to afford the house that you're buying. So you want to be very cautious in that you can afford that payment. I also want you to move to a place that doesn't increase your taxes as you age, because you're likely going to be on a fixed income in retirement. So you want to make sure that, and there are several cities and states that don't charge, senior property taxes. So you want to see what those states or cities are before you buy. And, you'll be able to have a stable payment over time versus you renting and that payment going up year after year. So I really like buying a house in retirement because at least you can stabilize your largest payment. But you want to be mindful about taxes and that sort of thing and get into those cities. Like, for example, where I live, they stopped charging seniors over 62 the school tax. And that's a big part of our property taxes. So you want to make sure that you're in one of those areas so you're not going to be hit over time by these high property tax bills. And in a lot of cities, they also freeze. So once you reach a certain age, they don't increase your taxes anymore. All right, number 9, can I use child support as income? I love this question as well, because I know we have a lot of single parents, that are trying to buy a house for their children, their families, and maybe they divorced and they had a house. Now they want to get a house again. So this answer is yes. You can use your child support as income. It's better if it's kind of court ordered, or it's, there's a written document that everybody's agreed to and they're paying. You have proof, that is consistent, but you can definitely use your child support as income. The only caution that I would give you is that if you're not going to receive it for 3 years or more, they may not count it. So if you have older children, 15, 16, teenagers, they may not count it as income. So you want to make sure If you're thinking about buying a house and you have older children, you may want to, like they're 12 or, that age and they're creeping on up there, you may want to make buying a house a priority because, they're not going to count it if they don't feel like you're going to be getting that child support after 3 years. And even if, this is another thing I want you to be mindful of, even if in your divorce decree, it says that your spouse will pay through college, they may not count that either because they'll say, well, what if your child stops going to college? Then they don't have to pay anymore. So you can't use that, to say, oh, well, they'll always be paying, 4 years after they're 18, because if they drop out of college, they stop going to college, you're not going to get that payment anymore. So you want to make sure you're getting it as early as possible, because in your mind, if hey, my child is 15, I'm going to get it for the next 3 years or maybe the next 7 years, then that's something that but the lender, they're not too sure. So they're not going to count that income. So I just want you to prioritize that. Number 10, I have my pre-approval. How do I know what my mortgage payment will be? Now, this is a very, very important question for you to ask your lender, because oftentimes they're quick to give you a pre-approval. You're pre-approved for $500,000, but you have no idea what your mortgage payment is going to be unless you ask them for a loan estimate. You want a loan estimate that's going to have your principal, your interest, your estimated insurance, your estimated taxes, any mortgage insurance. You want a very detailed estimate as to what will your monthly payment be. Do not stop at the pre-approval. After you get your pre-approval, the next thing you should ask your lender is, what will my mortgage payment be? I need a loan estimate. And if they're asking you, they need an address, just give them an address in an area that you're thinking about moving to so they can estimate those taxes accurately. But I hope this was helpful. These are my 10 questions. Put any other questions you want answered into the comments, and maybe I'll make another video with another 10 questions. But definitely check out my playlist because I go in detail about a lot of these things on my channel. Thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe to my channel for new videos every week.